Welcome to the 10th session of Healthy Head, Healthier Mind. You are looking at a picture. This is called Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence model. Here of the intelligence in nature as such, and he had classified the intelligence into totally 9 types. You can see on the screen linguistic, logical, mathematical, visual, spatial, musical, bodily, kinesthetic, interpersonal, intrapersonal, naturalistic, and existential. In linguistic already says that it is excelling in words, languages, poets, and writers. Logical, mathematical is excelling in maths, logical thinking, bankers, accountants. Visual spatial is like excels in shapes, designs, graphics, and visualization, designer and engineer. Musical is excels in performing and composing musical pieces, singer, musical composer. Bodily kinesthetic is excels in performing sports, physical activities, and body movements, actors and athletes. Interpersonal is ability to organize activities and social relationships and social workers. Intrapersonal ability to understand one's inner feelings, self-realization, and to know about oneself, philosopher, clergy. Naturalistic is loves plants, animals, and nature, understands natural world, biologist, conservationist. Existentially is concerned with inner life of mind, body, and soul, understands spirituality, spiritual leaders. Out of this, some of the professions require some of the intelligences. For example, for my own profession, I'm an engineer as well as a teacher. So I naturally require a linguistic intelligence. Then I require a logical and mathematical intelligence. Then I also require a visual and spatial intelligence. When we discuss any concept of electronics or communication, if it is electronics, we have to visualize the movement of electrons. If it is communication, we have to visualize the movement of electric current and the radio waves. So it requires visual or spatial intelligence. It requires logical or mathematical intelligence and linguistic intelligence. Along with that, it requires a bodily kinesthetic intelligence as well, because many times we have to connect the devices, we have to have a hardware circuitry, or we have to interface the boards with the other equipments, and we should have enough skill on that. And we should also have an interpersonal intelligence, because we have to deal with many types of students and many types of colleagues, many types of additional staff members, interdisciplinary staff members, and non-teaching staff members. That way it requires interpersonal intelligence also. To some extent it requires a intrapersonal intelligence as well, because we should keep on assessing ourselves about whether the objectives are met or not, whether we are able to sufficiently cover the syllabus within the given time frame or not. So engineering along with the teaching requires all these intelligences. Similarly, a medical profession also requires, except for this logical or mathematical intelligence, medical profession also requires all these intelligences which I mentioned. Maybe to some extent, the medical profession requires a naturalistic intelligence also, because they will have to understand as such the nature's working, and based on nature's working, its effect on health. And as such, each profession may require many such intelligences. Some of them will have this particular intelligence with them by birth. For example, people like Ilayaraja, people like A.R. Rahman, they have been composing very beautiful music. Even in Kannada film industry, people like Venkatesh, people like Vijay Bhaskar, they used to compose very beautiful ragas for the Kannada film industry. That way, some of them, they already have a musical intelligence with them. And painters, they will already have a visual intelligence with them. In general, the people who are more interested in sports and such activities, they will have a bodily or kinesthetic intelligence with them by birth itself. Okay, some of the intelligences can be gradually developed by means of training as well. For example, logical and mathematical intelligence, we can train our students to some extent to develop this intelligence, provided they are ready to work hard and put effort on that. Similarly, linguistic intelligence can be developed as such. I studied in a Kannada medium, SSLC. Suddenly in PUC, it was an English medium. In BE, it was completely English. Everywhere it used to be English. And I had a challenge about adapting myself to the new method of communication. So my English was, at that time, it was not even of this quality. Now also, I cannot say that my English is of a very good quality. Many times my Kannada speaking style itself intervenes with the English speaking style. That way, for all people who are speaking the Indian languages, they will have some extent of their particular earlier language on their English speaking style. So I had a tough challenge. What I used to do was, I had secured a prize when I was in high school for English reading itself. And that one teacher called Ramachandra Aital, he had given me a prize for English reading itself. That Oxford dictionary I had, it was having phonetic symbols. So whenever I used to find difficulty, I used to find out the method of pronouncing a particular word using those phonetic symbols in that particular Oxford dictionary. Even now I have the same dictionary with me. And along with that, I started reading orally. Means I used to actually keep on reading, not mentally, but orally. And I used to watch English movies, and by watching English movies, I used to observe how they speak. Similarly, I developed that method of English speaking. And afterwards, after my BE, when I came into the engineering profession, I had a tough challenge. When I was in engineering college, at least to some extent, with my classmates, we used to speak either in Kannada or in Hindi. But when I came to the profession, when I started working in an industry, even a documentation and everything was in English. Telephonic conversation was in English. Almost whole profession, morning 9 till 5, used to be in English. Except for with our own inner circle, we used to speak in Kannada. Otherwise, all the meetings used to happen in English. So then I thought it is very much necessary for me to start speaking a professional English as well. That is when I started reading English novels also in a different way, because till then I was reading English textbooks, engineering textbooks, something different. Whereas if I have to naturally start speaking English, I'll have to use the language as such. That is when I started reading Sidney Sheldon's novels. Very beautiful novels. One novel is called Master of the Game. One more very beautiful novel is If Tomorrow Comes. These two novels, all of you should read. Very beautiful. And I used to keep on reading these novels orally. And that is how gradually I developed the skill of this linguistic intelligence. That is why I'm telling you, some of these intelligences can be cultivated by means of proper training or such proper practice. But Howard Gardner says one particular intelligence called existential intelligence. Howard Gardner says, honestly, he said that he is not too sure about this existential intelligence. He says that he knows that this particular intelligence exists, but he has not done a big pursuit of this intelligence. He honestly admits. Okay. Because Gardner did not study the Vedantic philosophy, or he might not have studied the religious books in detail, he admits that he knows that existential intelligence is existing, but he is not thoroughly competent to discuss that because he has not explored that particular intelligence. That is where the practice of intense prayer or intense meditation is coming into picture. Only when you stop your own thought process, that is when you try to find out the source from where the thoughts are arising. The thoughts are arising. How? If you understand, then you will try to understand there is something beyond the body, something beyond the mind. Because of that only mind is existing, body is existing. As Howard Gardner is not a great spiritual person, he has not explored on the existential intelligence, but he has included it in these 9 types of intelligences. So, my dear friends, there are all tools available to measure this percentage of intelligence. You can for multiple intelligence test, and you can take your own test. Tomorrow is anyhow Sunday. Find some free time and take your own test as early as possible, because if you delay it, then you will forget it. In general, whenever people delay such important things, actually these are all self-analytical important things, but in general they evade it or delay it, then they gradually forget it. That's why I'm telling you, tomorrow is anyhow Sunday, you have free time. Take this test at the earliest and assess yourself in which intelligence you are lagging, that you can find out. Actually, it gives you a complete circular chart in which 9 types of intelligences, how much percentage it is, you are already having it, you can assess it. And whichever you want to improve upon, you can gradually put an effort for next few years by gradually improving upon it. But my point is, the practice of Ashtanga Yoga has helped me in developing all these 9 types of intelligences. Linguistic intelligence, where we have to study the Sanskrit books and we have to sometimes chant the shloka and our mouth should adopt that particular shloka. Pronunciation of Sanskrita is very much refined. As is written, so is pronounced. And there is a separate branch in the Vedanga called Shiksha about how to pronounce. That way, pronunciation is fully standardized in the language called Sanskrita. Such standardization of pronunciation is totally lacking in English. So, when people start using Sanskrita, at least to some extent, their other language skills also will gradually improve upon. Because Sanskrit is the mother of most other languages on this earth. And gradually, when you start studying Sanskrit books or when you start using Sanskrit in your real life, at least to some extent, your skill in speaking Kannada also will improve. Speaking Telugu, Tamil, speaking Hindi, English, all that will improve. Because in Sanskrita, as is spoken, so is written. As is written, so is spoken. That way, linguistic intelligence, in my case, had a drastic improvement when I started studying the Sanskrita books and started speaking about those verses in my classes. And logical intelligence got improved when we started studying Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika. Basically, Nyaya and Vaisheshika Siddhanta, these are called Shat Shastra. They gradually deal with the materialistic existence of life. Actually, Sankhya and Yoga are basically psychological existence of life. Nyaya and Vaisheshika are discussing the materialistic existence of life. And Mimamsa and Vedanta are discussing the spiritual existence of life. That way, life has got 3 dimensions or 3 domains. One is a bodily dimension, one is a mental dimension, one is a spiritual dimension. So all these 6 shastras are discussing that. So naturally, that itself is called as Tarka Shastra or logic itself. Nyaya and Vaisheshika, they are called as Tarka Shastra themselves. And when we discuss a lot of Vedanta, we have to visualize how universe is and how God has planned this universe, how God has planned nature. And whenever we chant a lot of stotras or bhajans or kirtanas or vachanas, we will gradually develop the musical intelligence. In general, in my classes, I keep on making students to sing Shishunala Sharifa's songs, Sarvajna Vachanas, Basavanna Akka Allama's Vachanas, and many Sanskrit poems, especially the poems composed by Sadashiva Brahmendra. That way there is musical intelligence. And as we practice yogasana, we have a bodily kinesthetic intelligence. And as we keep on communicating with each other, with different aged people, different cultured people, we will gradually develop interpersonal intelligence. As we meditate more, we develop intrapersonal intelligence. Once in a while, at least once in a year, we keep going for some pilgrimage or excursion. We particularly choose some place where nature is also there and there is serenity also and there is a spiritual significance also. We choose such places where there must be multiple purposes fulfilled. That means there must be enjoyment also, relaxation also, and some learning also. So that is naturalistic intelligence. And when we keep on discussing Vedanta and studying the Vedanta books or the Advaita philosophy, we keep on developing existential intelligence. That way, Ashtanga Yoga, along with the other branches of yoga, is going to develop all these 9 intelligences directly as such. That is the greatness of our ancient seers. So, let me go to the next slide. I have already spoken enough about this particular slide. As soon as possible, make your own assessment by taking that online test of multiple intelligence. In whichever intelligence you are lacking, you gradually try to practice some of those things where that particular intelligence can be improved upon. That way, your evolution of the mind will be accelerated, at least in this life. Otherwise, the evolution of the mind will take its own time. If you have to keep on dying and keep on being reborn, keep on dying, keep on being reborn, you will take many lives to learn some of the basic lessons of life. So, if at all you have all these 9 intelligences in place and if they are improved upon it, then gradually your liberation or salvation will be easier. That is when Howard Gardner said he cannot authoritatively talk about existential intelligence because he did not explore that particular domain, whereas we are happy that we have already explored that particular domain as well. With this, let me go to the next slide. Now, there is one more person called Bloom. This Bloom, he made a model called taxonomy. He related this especially for the educational sector. And he found out the gaps which are there in the conventional education sector, especially in the modern education sector. And he made this model saying that there must be 6 levels in which teaching and learning process should happen. First one is the student will remember. Next, the student will understand whatever he remembers. Then the student will apply whatever he understood. Then the student will analyze after the application. When he practically does something, then he will analyze that application along with whatever he has remembered and understood. Then finally, after he analyzes, he will gradually evaluate those things. And after evaluation, the student can be able to develop his own creative methodologies or his own designs he should be able to create. So Bloom related this to particular educational system where he said that where education is lacking, education should not be only remembering, understanding and applying. In general, education used to be only in the lower 3 levels. Students used to mug up a lot, they used to remember a lot, hardly they used to understand, hardly they used to apply. There was supposed to be an equal importance to be given for practice along with the theory, which was lacking in the earlier conventional education. But I'm not talking about the ancient education. Ancient education was a Gurukula system where all these 6 were there. That I will tell later. But in the modern education, in the last 1 century, it was predominantly only the lower three levels. That is where there was a lagging of the student quality. Students used to get degrees and they used to get postgraduate degrees also, but they never made their own designs. That is when Bloom made this particular model. Why I put this in this particular presentation is that we can relate it very efficiently for the yogic system as well, or our system as well. For example, let us say you start practicing yogasana. You will have to remember the name of the yogasana. For example, let us say there is an asana called Sarvangasana. Sarva Anga Asana. It is an inverted posture. In the inverted posture, blood will rush towards the brain. When the blood rushes towards the brain, blood will gradually energize eyes also, ears also, and head as such, nostrils also, tongue also. So out of the 5 sensory organs, 4 sensory organs are directly present in the head itself, except for the skin. Skin is surrounding the body. Otherwise, all the 4 senses of vision, hearing, smelling, and tasting, they are already in the head. When you do this particular posture of Sarvangasana, gradually blood rushes towards the brain and brain will get energized. Gradually, passively, it will energize the skin as well. As long as the brain is functioning well, body is functioning well. And your eyes are energized, your ears are energized, your nostrils are energized, your tongue is energized. That is why it is called Sarva Anga Asana. All organs exercise. Now let us say you remember the Sarva Anga Asana. Now you have understood the meaning of it. I told you the meaning of that particular word. Now when you practice that particular asana, then that is when you are applying it. After you apply it, you keep on practicing that Sarvangasana, you will gradually analyze. After about 1 week of practice or 2 weeks of practice, you will analyze Sarvangasana. In what way you can attain perfection in that particular asana, in what way you are right now unable to perform. Maybe in a practice of about 1 month's time, you will be able to practice it better than what you practiced today. That way you will start analyzing that particular posture. Now, evaluation means, let us say you learn one more asana called Matsyasana. Matsyasana is the reverse posture of or complementary posture of Sarvangasana. So now you will evaluate Sarvangasana along with some other asana. For example, there is one more asana called Nikunjasana. You will evaluate Sarvangasana with other types of inverting postures. And you will gradually find out what is the advantage of Sarvangasana, what may be the limitation of Sarvangasana, what is the advantage of Matsyasana, what may be the limitation of Matsyasana. Someday you may be able to create your own asana. It is possible. Actually, in those 6 sets, about 3 exercises were created by myself. Avartana Nivartana Kriya, it was named by myself. And Kshvelana Kriya, that was named by myself. And Uttolana Kriya, that was named by myself. So that way, that ability all of us will develop gradually. That way, the practice of asana is going to imply all these 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Similarly, the same case will apply with pranayama as well. Same case will apply with pratyahara dharana as well. Some are physical practices, some are mental practices. But you will remember the practice, you will understand the practice, you will apply it in your life, then you will analyze that particular practice, then you will evaluate that particular practice with some other practice. This is more of comparison and judging what is the limitation and what is the advantage or pros and cons of a particular practice. And you may be able to create your own set of practices. This is called Bloom's taxonomy. This has been very much there in the spiritual education in the Indian context. Somehow it was lacking in the modern education. Now in all the modern education, they are trying to impart Bloom's taxonomy everywhere, even in the evaluation or even in the question papers, even in the internal tests, everywhere they are trying to put it. I used to funnily think that again they are going back to the ancient system now. because the ancient system of education contained all these 6 levels. Bloom was completely unaware of that, because Bloom would not have never practiced Ashtanga Yoga in his life. Bloom would not have never studied the religious books or spiritual books in his life. These are all basically high-level technical people or analysts. So they used to analyze things in their own angle. Both Howard Gardner and both Bloom. I am not blaming them. I am appreciating them. But their gap was that they did not explore themselves into the spiritual domain, which was supposed to be the first case there in the ancient wisdom. In the ancient days, people used to talk more about God. People used to meditate more upon God. People used to discuss a lot about God. Why people went away from discussing about God or discussing about nature? Because of the industrialization, because of the technical revolution, people became addicted to some other type of lifestyle. They thought that they are developing a lot of new things and there is a progress happening there. Actually, there is no progression happening. There is a digression happening. Now it is time that they have to come back to all those ancient methodologies. That is what is happening now. That is when we say Kala Chakra, Karma Chakra. Look at the last line. Creativity is not an individual achievement. Creativity emerges from within. So when I said, I carefully mentioned that I named it as Avartana Nivartana Kriya, I named it as Kvelana Kriya, and I named it as Uttolana Kriya. But I did not tell that I created it. If I say that I created it, then it is simply exhibiting that my arrogant attitude. Creativity is not an individual achievement. Creativity emerges from within. Basically, creativity is emerging out of the dreaming state that I have already discussed with you. So, if at all MS Subbulakshmi sings a song so blissfully, so majestically, MS Subbulakshmi never exhibited arrogance that she is a great singer. The day when people become arrogant about all these abilities, gradually they will get disconnected from the creativity, because creativity is not an individual thing. That is when people are making mistakes. Whenever initially when they have some few achievements, they will start thinking that it is their own achievement and they develop ego and arrogance over it. Later on, they will not have such abilities because they have lost connection with the inner self. They have to understand that creativity is coming from where? Ilayaraja had composed so many thousands of songs, beautiful melody. And how come that songs used to come out of him? Even today, Ilayaraja is such a down-to-earth musician. He never exhibited his arrogance that he is a great composer of music. The day when people become arrogant, the creative aspect goes away, because it is emerging from within. It is not an individual achievement. That is why yesterday I had told, when a peacock is dancing, it is a creative aspect coming out of the peacock. When the cuckoo is singing, it's a creative aspect coming out of it. Those birds cannot become arrogant saying that it is my song or my dance. They don't do that way at all, because it is the self which is emerging its creative aspect through life. Only the human beings are yet to understand this simple fact. So I wanted to show you both these slides just because of this particular importance, that the process of Ashtanga Yoga is such a great practice, both for development of intelligence as well as for learning through 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Similarly, if I have to give you some more examples, Shiksha, Kalpa, Vyakarana, Nirukta, Jyotisha, Chandas. These are called 6 Vedangas. All these 6 Vedangas are also going to develop the same Bloom's taxonomy, and they're also going to develop the same Garner's multiple intelligence model. That is why in the olden days, in the Indian education system, they purposefully used to make the students to recite a lot of mantras. Lot of Vedic mantras purposefully. It takes a lifetime for some of them to understand the meaning of the mantras, but they will be definitely trying to understand the mantras once they attain a certain age, because they will remember all those mantras. Even today in the Veda mantra Patana, there is a specific method of chanting called as Ghanapatha. It's a tradition of chanting the mantras only by memorizing and recalling without looking at the book. It's a great practice, and they keep on practicing for years together. That is how the Vedic mantras have remained even today as Kantapatha, because of the practice of Ghanapatha. Even if the books are lost, no problem. Even if the books are destroyed, no problem. The mantra remains with some people's head, and that will be transmitted only orally to the next generation. That is how, from centuries together, these mantras are preserved in the human memory, which indicates that even the Howard multiple intelligence model as well as the Bloom's taxonomy are applied into the Indian education system many centuries before, many millenniums before. It's not a new thing as such. They are reinventing the new thing, old thing once again. The core learning. This has been given by Edgar Dale in 1969. You can see, doing a dramatic presentation or simulating the real experience or doing the real thing, that is what we remember 90%. I'll go from top to bottom. Confucius has told that I see and I forget, I hear and I remember, I do and I understand. So, based on this, let us say after 2 weeks, whatever we generally remember, after 2 weeks, we generally remember only 10% of what we read, only 20% of what we hear, only 30% of what we see, 50% of what we see as well as hear, 70% of what we say, because we say based on what we remember by seeing and hearing, and that is a registering. Again, whatever we say, we listen to it. Whenever we listen to it, we remember it better. Now, 90% of what we say and what we do. If I tell you a Bhagavad Gita shloka, if I live as per the shloka of the Bhagavad Gita, then I remember the shloka for my lifetime. Whichever shloka I have been quoting here, I have been living as per that particular shloka only. So 90% of what we say and what we do. If I have to talk authentically about the practices of yoga, I should keep on practicing those things in my life. Then I remember 90%. Then when I remember that 90%, because I say and I do. So this is called active stage of remembrance. 70% of what we say, 90% of what we say and do, that is the active state of remembrance. Whereas all other things are passive. You seeing, you hearing, you only seeing, you only hearing, you only reading. After about 2 weeks, you may not remember much. For example, let us say you read a novel. After reading a novel, after about 2 weeks, you will remember the general concept, general outline, general story. But each chapter, each contents, you will not remember. Only an essential thing you may remember. Or whatever a specific topic which you studied there or you read there in the novel, which relates to your own life, that you may remember more. Otherwise, you may not remember. So, best thing is what? 90% of what we say and what we do, that is what we are going to remember. If people have to remember, they will have to do whatever we say. And they will have to say whatever they understand, whatever they see, whatever they hear. That is how all of us learn. From the passive mode, gradually we have to get into active mode so that we will remember better. Let me go to the next slide. Exercises for memorization. I'll give you a few examples. There is a method called creative method. You can develop ideas for remembrance, such as acronyms and visuals. For example, there is, I have written one acronym here, APST and DP. All people seem to need data processing. That is a full form of this. This I have not created. Somebody else has created. I am quoting it here. APST NDP means all people seem to need data processing. In computer science, we have a OSI model, Open Systems Interconnect model, where at the top we have an application layer. At the bottom we have a physical layer. Physical layer, data link layer, network layer, transport layer, session layer, presentation layer, application layer. Now right now I am using a Microsoft PowerPoint. That is an application layer. But below that there is a presentation layer. Below that there is a session layer. Now in between you and me there is a wireless connection there. That means data, whatever I speak here, that speech is converted into data and it is going through a wired medium and through a wireless medium and it is reaching you. Then there is a transportation layer. For the transportation to happen, there must be a lot of network layer. For the network layer to function, below that there is a data link layer. Below the data link layer, there must be actual wires, actual radio signals, and actual processing of the data. My speech should get converted into digital form, and that is basically physical layer. Now, how do the students remember all these things? They simply made an acronym called all people seem to need data processing. This sentence anybody can remember. When they remember that, naturally they can remember APST NDP, application, presentation, session, transport, network, data link, physical. This way you can develop so many such ideas for remembrance. Actually, when I was studying MTech and even during my PhD coursework, I used to create a lot of such acronyms for my own purpose, so as to remember many such linked words or connected words. Similarly, look at this VHDL and Verilog. Now, Verilog is case-sensitive language. VHDL is case-insensitive language. Just you remember the way in which it is written. VHDL is all in capital letters. Verilog, one capital letter, other small letters. So, just by visualizing this whenever, we can easily remember that VHDL is case-insensitive, whereas Verilog is case-sensitive because both cases are there here in Verilog. That is how we can develop the ideas to remember. I'm showing you a picture here. This is a great method of remembering the ganas in the Sanskrita poetry's chandas. As I told, Shiksha, Kalpa, Vyakarana, Nirukta, Jyotisha, Chandas, out of which this chandas is basically a systematic arrangement of alphabets and words so that each stanza will contain a specific number of words. For example, a specific number of alphabets. For example, Gayatri is a name of a meter or Gayatri Chandas, which specifically contains only 24 alphabets. Gayatri, Ushnik, Anushtup, Brihati, Panti, Trishtup, Jagati. That way there are 7 meters in Sanskrita poetry. Most of the Bhagavad Gita is in Anushtup Chandas. Complete Ramayana is in Anushtup Chandas. Any shloka you pick up in Ramayana, it is in Anushtup Chandas. Vishnu Sahasranama Stotram, all 108 verses are in Anushtup Chandas, which means one stanza contains exactly 32 alphabets. One line contains exactly 16 alphabets. Okay. That way you can check that. So this is a great way of poetry where they used to systematically plan a meter where specific number changed. Now it gradually becomes a bigger kavya and there are bigger chandas meters called shikharini, vratta. Sometimes dandakam word is used called as vratta. Now this vratta is a much bigger collection of alphabets. Now in this vratta, if you have explaining the rules of grammar, they have ganas. How to remember the gana? Yamata Rajabhana Salagam. You can remember Yaha Mata Rajabhana. This has a specific Sanskrita meaning. And Yagana, Magana, Tagana, Ragana, Nagana, Sagana, Laghu and Guru. La and Ga means Laghu and Guru. And you can see here it is arranged Laghu, Guru, Guru. Then Guru, Guru, Guru. Then Guru, Guru, Laghu. Then Guru, Laghu, Guru. Then Laghu, 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 Laghu. Then Laghu, Laghu, Guru. This particular arrangement is there in this particular word itself. It's a single word. In this word itself, this particular arrangement is there. And a complete arrangement is related to this Yagana, Magana, Tagana, Ragana, Jagana, Bhagana, Tagana, along with respective Laghu or respective Guru. This is a great creative remembering the Ganas, which ancient wise people had developed. We can only appreciate. There is a method called a linking method. If at all you have to remember many words, many irrelevant words, or maybe the relevant words, all those words if you have to remember, how do you remember? You can construct a very funny and absurd story containing all these words. Let us say you will have to remember around 20 words or 30 words. Especially in the medical science, they will have to remember a lot of terms of the body parts. And if they have to remember, they can construct a very funny story containing all those words. The story can be having an absurd content as well. And if it is absurd, it will be remembered more because absurd is funny. If you can construct such a story and you keep on telling the story to yourself, whenever you remember the story, and that story will contain all these words, you will naturally remember all those words. When I first attended Dr. Bharat Chandra's demo class, there he casually called one person from the audience, and that audience, that person was standing away, and Bharat Chandra asked the audience people to tell each word. Everyone should tell one word. These words can be related or unrelated. 30 people told 30 words, different types of words. Somebody told butterfly, somebody told helicopter, somebody told food, somebody told hotel, somebody told salary. That way it went on. And all those 30 words were written on the board. And one person was taken from the audience. Dr. Bharat Chandra told him that this person will tell all these 30 words in the next 5 minutes. And we were wondering, how can he tell? What they did was, they took him backside and they asked him to construct a funny story just by looking at those 30 words. He constructed a funny story by connecting all those 30 words one after the other in a very funny and absurd way for his own purpose. Now they removed the board. When they removed the board, they called him to stage and he told all the 30 words exactly as they are, because he remembered that funny story which he only had created. That funny story had contained all these 30 words. That way, for the students, if they have to remember so many words, sometimes irrelevant words, they can construct a funny story. Once the exam is over, they can forget the story also, no problem. But until then, they will remember. And I had to remember many such wordings during my MTech. I used to construct some funny stories. Now I don't remember any of those stories because exam is over and I have forgotten those wordings also. For example, later on we remember only the conceptual learning. We don't remember all those specific wordings as such. That way in engineering and in medical science, we will have thousands of words. We cannot remember each and every word that way. Next method is called pegging method. If at all you have to remember a phone number, how do you remember a phone number? Nowadays, anyhow, your mobile phone itself has become a biggest memorizing tool. People sometimes may not remember their own landline number also. They may not remember their own phone number also, because everything is there in the phone itself with its own names. But if at all you have to remember your own vehicle number, it helps. You can use letters or images for numbers and with them. That is called mnemonics. For example, Let us say my landline number is 234697174. My phone's landline number is 234697174. How do I remember this? I can use letters. Let us say for 2, I can use that letter. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, that way we can count. Now for letter number digit 1, it A. Digit 2, it can be B. That way, for this number 234697174, I can replace 2 with B, and I can replace A, B, C, 3 with C, and again there is 4, I can replace it with D. That way I can go on. 234697174, I can replace all with those particular English alphabets. Now, all those letters, I can create a sentence using those letters. Now I'll remember the sentence. Once I remember the sentence, I'll remember my landline phone number of my home. If you don't want to use letters, you can have some images. I have been telling you about the Chinese method of kanji, where they used to use a lot of images for particular sentences. Many times remembering numbers is difficult, but remembering images is easy. Remembering a sentence is easy. If there is a sentence which contains these letters, those letters can be again converted back into numbers, and the numbers are remembered that way. This is called pegging method. This I only had formed this particular sentence. Mother sat, father went, teacher tutored son. You may think this is a crazy sentence, but this is one method which I developed to remember the Rahu Kala here in Karnataka state. Mother sat, father went, teacher tutored son. Mother, Monday. Sat, Saturday. Father, Friday. Went, Wednesday. Teacher, Thursday. Tutored, Tuesday. Son, Sunday. Now you can check with the Panchanga, and you can check the Rahukala timings. Morning 7:30 to 9 on Monday, it is Rahukala. Then later on 9 to 10:30, it is Saturday. Then 10:30 to 12 is Friday. 12 to 1:30 is Wednesday. That way it goes on. I framed this sentence so that I'll remember this particular Rahukala. Many times people keep on asking me, what time is this? For some auspicious activities, they find out the time. For example, when we were submitting the PhD synopsis to our dean, my guide specifically told me, let us follow the auspicious timing. Is it Rahukala now? During Rahukala, let us not go to the dean's chamber. But at that time, I remembered this, and I told, sir, now it is not Rahukala, we can go. We went and submitted synopsis. Now you may ask me, sir, do you believe in all these things? I have already told, Jyotisha is part of Veda. There is auspiciousness with the time, and Jyotisha is related that way with many of our auspicious activities as well. Even for sowing a seed in the olden days, the farmer used to consult the Jyotishi in the village, and he used to ask what is the favorable time for sowing the seeds, because then they used to find out this is the auspicious time for sowing the seeds so that there will be a better crop. If you say that whether you believe in it or not, then I should say that astronomy is related to astrology that way. I will talk more about astrology in my third presentation. This you already keep expecting this particular sentence only from me. More of those sciences I am going to discuss only in the next presentation. So this is a sentence which I constructed so that I'll remember Monday, Saturday, Friday, Wednesday, and teacher Thursday. Thursday itself is called Guruvara. Guru, teacher. That way I can easily remember. Tutored, I can easily remember. Tutored means Tuesday, because Q came. Sun, Sunday. This way this sentence beautifully came out of me. I cannot say that I constructed this sentence. Creativity always emerges from within. So this is a method through which complete Rahukala sequence can be remembered from Monday till Sunday. This is one type of pegging method or using mnemonics. You will have to keep on using your brain. For using your brain, keep on solving quizzes, keep on solving puzzles, keep on solving crosswords. Many years before, I was staying with my uncle, and my uncle used to get the paper Hindu and the paper Deccan Herald. In that particular paper Hindu, I think it is in the second page or in the fourth page, there used to be a lot of such crosswords and puzzles, jumbling words, and I used to try out all of them. And I used to buy quiz books from the market, and I used to solve quizzes on my own. Now, anyhow, this is an online generation where in online itself you will have umpteen number of quizzes available, puzzles available, crosswords available. You'll have to keep on using the brain for developing more and more of intelligence. I have already told you the neural network and the synaptic connections and how neurons will be efficient. So you'll have to keep on using the brain. My one good suggestion to all of you will be keep on playing chess. Chess is a very good game for developing logic as well as visualization. Those who have mobile phones, you have all smartphones, you also become smarter than your phone. You can download the chess app in your phone. Whenever you have free time, you can keep playing through your mobile itself, playing with the mobile itself. Your mobile phone itself is the opponent. And there are many levels in the online chess apps. And one by one, you can keep on promoting yourself to the next level. So that way, the game of chess is a brilliant game. There are physical exercises such as Sarvangasana and Matsya. Keep on practicing them so that more blood will flow towards the brain and brain will be effectively utilized. There are breathing exercises such as Kapalabhati and Bhramari. Kapalabhati you already know. Bhramari is nothing but chanting of Omkara within with the mouth closed, as if this way you extend this chanting of Makara as long as possible. The whole brain will vibrate with this particular sound. And because of that, there will be more and more of flow of prana within the brain. That way, Bhramari Pranayama helps in the effective utilization of the brain or effective health of the brain. Focusing exercise such as mental chanting of Om. Whenever you are free, let us say you are simply sitting in a bus or in a vehicle doing nothing. Simply don't do nothing. Keep on mentally chanting Om. This is a suggestion for my Hindu friends. For my Christian friends, you can keep on mentally chanting Amen. For my Muslim friends, you can keep on mentally chanting Ameen. For my chanting mentally Satnam. Any particular word which relates itself to God, choose that particular word in any language. Choose that particular word, keep on chanting when you are actually idle. That way, your mind will not become vacillating. You will have more focus and your brain will not be having too much of tasks to do. Brain also will be de-stressed. Look at this picture. The blue button is true, is the red button saying. The red button is false, the blue button saying. Now, which one is true, which one is false? Can we say that if the red button is true, then this blue says red button is false, then the red button cannot be true. Let us say the blue button is telling true. Blue button says the red button is false. Then the red button says the blue button is true. Which one is false? So this type of arrangement of sentences is completely intriguing. We cannot come to a conclusion which is true, which is false. Are both false? Both cannot be true. Are both false? We should come to a conclusion both may be false. You find out. Such sentences, arrangement of sentences at times can be intriguing. That is when I told yesterday, sometimes whatever we see also may not be true. Sometimes whatever we think we know also may not be true. Look at this picture. You can actually do this exercise. I have done this exercise. You can take a graph sheet and cut the graph sheet in this manner. Here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 squares horizontal, 3 squares vertical. That way you can cut this triangle. You can have this complete triangle, bigger triangle. You can cut it this way. Then you can again cut off this shape. Again this orange colored shape. Upper side you have one more cyan colored triangle. Cyan colored triangle and red colored triangle. Then you have two other shapes. One is brown and one is green. Now simply cut this biggest triangle and arrange the pieces this way as it is shown at the bottom. Cyan color triangle, let it come below. Red color triangle, let it go above. The other two pieces you arrange this way. You will have an empty square here. Now it is the same triangle which was at the top. It is cut into 4 pieces in different shapes. It is arranged below. Where did this empty space come into picture? How that missing piece come into picture? This I personally did. I could not understand at all. Personally, it is happening that way. I could not understand at all. I kept on observing this picture. When I kept on observing the picture, suddenly I got the trick here. The trick is, look at the center here. The center, compare the same thing from top to bottom, top picture and bottom picture. At the top picture, that red color triangle is, its tip is exactly at the 8th square. Whereas here if you see, that particular 8th square, it is not exactly the tip, it is slightly extending up. Now when you arrange these shapes, there can be a slight extension which is happening upside, just because you have to arrange it in a straight line fashion for these two triangles. When you slightly rearrange, it slightly goes up. When it slightly goes up, that particular space actually relates to 1 square space. Otherwise, the total area of the triangle remains the same. Just a small minor error which is happening in the arrangement is creating this particular space. Otherwise, area is the same. That small minor error, unless you closely observe, you will not be able to find out. Which means, many times, whatever you are damn sure also, you may not be sure. It will be very difficult at times to come into a conclusion as such. Which simply means we cannot depend only on our sense organs. For any of the final conclusion, I just mentioned about the existential intelligence. We cannot understand, cannot have that existential intelligence only through the sensory inputs. That is my purpose of putting all these pictures in this presentation. I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think. This was told by Socrates. Socrates, one of the greatest philosophers. Socrates had his own committed students. One day, Socrates and his students were sitting at the front yard and they were discussing a high level of philosophy. And at the kitchen, his wife was cooking. And his wife called the husband, go to the backyard, chop some firewood and bring some wood to me. I require wood for cooking. Socrates said, okay, I'm coming. Okay, I'm coming. But Socrates was engrossed in this philosophical discussion with the students. And he took his own time to respond to Xanthippe's request or command or order or whatever it was. Now, after a few minutes, Xanthippe became so angry on her husband, she brought a bucket of water and she poured that bucket of water on top of Socrates' head. And she cursed him that you are good for nothing fellow. You don't know how to chop firewood and you don't want to help me in my cooking work. You and your stupid students will keep on sitting here in the morning and you keep on discussing some useless subject. I am doing hard work there and you people are not bothered. That way she cursed and she went inside. She only went to get the firewood. Now the students of Socrates were aghast. They told, what sir, you are a great teacher. We are learning from you. This is your treatment at your own home, where your own wife told that you are a good for nothing fellow, sir. Then Socrates laughed. Then those students said, sir, did you not become angry now? She poured one bucket of water on your head. Did you not become angry? Now he said, actually, my wife's head is hot. She is trying to make my head cool. She was supposed to do that with herself. Now students again asked, sir, if this is the case, how did you become a philosopher? Then Socrates said, my dear students, get married. If you get a good wife, you will enjoy life. If you get a bad wife, you will become a philosopher. Now my lady audience will curse me. Especially married ladies who are right now listening to me, they will curse me. They will say, what sir? I am not mentioning you. I am not mentioning me. I am mentioning Socrates and Xantippe. Okay. Sometimes even with the good wife also, we can be philosophers. I have told you the story of Thiruvalluvar. Thiruvalluvar's wife Vasuki was such a devoted lady towards her own husband. Still, Thiruvalluvar was a great philosopher. The story I told you about Socrates' life. But Socrates is one of the greatest philosophers on this earth. So sadly, he was poisoned. So sadly, there was a conspiracy against him. And he was asked to take back his sentence. He told a very beautiful sentence, know thyself. That was a very beautiful sentence. Whatever Socrates told, know thyself, the same thing Veda says, Aham Brahmasmi. Same thing Jesus Christ says, me and my Father are one. But at the time of Socrates, people could not understand the way in which Socrates spoke about philosophy. And Socrates was given two choices, either to take back the sentence or to drink poison and die. Socrates told, I am not going to take back the sentence. I am going to go for the second option. I am going to drink the poison and die. And he drank poison and he died. Such a great philosopher. And that was the treatment for him at that particular time. So Socrates told, I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think. All of us have to learn our own lessons. Until lessons are learned, lessons will be repeated. Look at this picture. Just observe. Here, teacher has asked the student 2 plus 2 equals. And the classmates are helping. It is 4. It is 4. And the student has written the picture of a palm because they are showing 4. That is when Socrates told, I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think. Can you find the mistake? Where is the mistake? Immediately people are searching for the mistake. They are thinking somewhere below there must be a mistake. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Is there any mistake there? Mistake is there in the sentence itself. Can you find the mistake is there? The is there twice. But at one shot in the beginning, many of you may not be able to find out where is the mistake. Why? Lack of observation, oversight, overconfidence, hurry, urgent reading. That is when people do not observe properly. You should have very keen observation. This "the" is mentioned twice here. So, take care of your memory. Learn to like those which you have to remember. Study and understand and then repeat the process. If you don't understand, then don't study at all. If you are studying, make it a point that you will understand whatever you study. Repeat the same process. That way you will remember. Writing helps in three ways: thinking, reading, checking. I told all of you at least one shloka of Bhagavad Gita you write every day. What happens? When you are writing, you are reading. You are reading the main book, then you are writing in the notebook. When you are reading, you are thinking. Whatever you have to read, then whatever you have to write, you are thinking. When you are thinking, again when you are writing, you are checking whether you have written the same thing, whatever is there in the main book. When I told you this exercise, some of you may be thinking that already when the printed book is there, why should we write again? If the printed book is there, if it remains closed, then that is of no use. Even if you read also, you will forget. I have already showed you the slide. After about 2 weeks, whatever you read also, major of the thing is you are going to forget. So writing is going to help in these three ways. Whenever you write, you are reading once again whatever you are writing, and you are checking whether whatever you have written is correct. Then again you are thinking whatever you have written, what is it? So that way, each verse of the Bhagavad Gita, out of the 700 shlokas, there are so many shlokas which are going to create a major difference in your thought process itself. That particular book is going to refine your mind as such. That is how writing always helps in these three ways. Keep the eyes healthy, use herbal eye drops. I have already told you more about it earlier. Keep your head cool, use coconut oil regularly. For your head, it will keep your head cool. Consume the following foods regularly: almonds, dates, yam, carrots, tapioca, ashgoad, fresh green peas, brahmi, mandukaparni, drumstick leaves. I have already told about all these things in my earlier presentation itself. Don'ts. What all don'ts? Don't watch television excessively. Take care of your eyes. Just because you have a television at home, just because you have hundreds of channels, don't keep on surfing the channels. Majority of the channels are not at all useful for any type of knowledge. Just take care of your eyes, take care of your brain also. Don't use mobile phone excessively. Take care of your brain. In my next slide, I have the tip for that. Mobile phones are radiating 2 watts of power. And if you keep on using them near your brain, that radiation is going to affect your brain. I'm going to tell about it in my next slide. Don't work with computer excessively. Take care of your time. If you keep on working with computer, at times you may simply want to check one YouTube video. You watch one YouTube video, that next one is coming, then next one is coming, then next one is coming. It is all waiting in the playlist. And you will end up wasting maybe 1 hour, maybe 2 hours, maybe 4 hours, maybe complete whole day. Let us say Kapil Chopran's comedy show. You will see one episode. Now automatically the next one is going to load. You will see that this one I will see, this will be last. But that will not be last. It will go on like that. You will become addicted. But ultimately in that 1 hour of Kapil Sharma show, there is not much of a comedy. But because you are viewing it, Kapil Sharma will become a millionaire now. You will remain a stupid fool just laughing at some of the stupid jokes or some stupid humors. He always keeps making fun of somebody else in the audience or somebody else there on the stage. That is not comedy that way. That is some humorous time pass. So don't work with computer excessively. Take care of your time. Don't keep talking about useless things. Take care of your mind. Whatever you cannot change, you better change. Most of the time, people keep on talking about the things which they cannot change. They know that they cannot change. Still, they keep on talking about it rubbishly, foolishly. Now, don't keep on talking about useless things. Whatever you can change, you bring that change, you make that change. Whatever you cannot change, don't keep on cribbing about it. Take care of your mind. Don't listen to music while studying. This is the mistake which many people do. They will have earphone, they'll keep on listening to music, they think that they are studying. As I have told you yesterday, brain can do only one thing at a time. Focus can be only with one thing. If you keep on listening to music, you will lose your focus with studying. Don't read excessively. Follow the 20-20-20 rule. I have already told about this. Every 20 minutes, take a 20 seconds break at least and look 20 feet away at least. Don't think of too many things at once. Do one thing at a time. Actually, you can do only one thing at a time. You cannot do many things at a time. Don't remember all the painful experiences, but remember the lessons of the pain so as not to get exposed to it once again. I have told you that I also remember the painful experiences. I also remember the blissful experiences. Both I remember. Why I remember the painful experiences? Because I should not get exposed to it once again. Let us say one of my very close friends cheated me financially. Now I doubt everybody. I don't have any financial interaction with any of my friends now because I don't know when people will change. When my childhood friend himself can cheat me with a 5-digit figure, that too almost 15 years before. 15 years before, even a 5-digit figure was a big figure. And I did not get even 1 rupee back till now. If a childhood friend of mine can cheat me, then anybody can cheat me that way. So I have learned a very bitter lesson that I should not have a bigger financial dealing or even lending or even taking also with anybody. It is better that I earn my money, I spend my money, I live happily with my own financial resources. Let my head handle only that much load which I can bear. I should not have a bigger load on my head so that I should not lose my peaceful sleep. This has been my lifestyle. So that way, at times I remember all the painful experiences also just to be alert of such experiences once again. I don't want to have such stressful situations once again in my life. That is where wisdom is required. Not to create your own problem, for that wisdom is required. My Paramaguru Geetanandagiri used to say that there is no problem as such. You are the problem. Many times people create their own problems. If problems occur by themselves, somehow we can find out about how to solve those problems. But if people keep on creating problems, then how to solve that? It is better to avoid those people who are themselves a problem. This is one great lesson which I have learned. I'm talking about mobile phone now. Minimize the exposure to RF radiation. Avoid carrying the mobile phone on your body. I'll tell you one of my experiences. Because of the practicing of yoga, my body is very much sensitive to any such small things. When I purchased mobile phone almost 12 years before or what, I used to keep the mobile phone in my right hand pocket in the pant. After about half an hour, I used to feel a very cool sensation in my right thigh. That cool sensation was not actually a happy sensation. It used to be an irritation. And I shifted this mobile phone to the left side pant pocket. Then I used to have the same experience even with my left thigh. Then I gradually understood that it is not actually a cooling sensation. It is the blood circulation which is being affected in my thighs because of the radiation which is emitted by the mobile phone. Then I searched in the net about how much of radiation each mobile phone is radiating. I came to know that a 2G phone itself radiates 2 watts of power. Because if you have mobile phone with you, the nearest base station may be next road or the farthest base station may be 1 kilometer away. Now, in between you and your tower, in between your mobile phone and your tower, if the distance is more, mobile phone will pump more power. When it pumps more power, even when the mobile phone is idle also, it keeps on pumping power. Why? Because of the location update. Mobile phone will keep on telling that I am here, I am here, I am here. And base station will keep on picking up. And that is how your location is updated. That is how your GPS is also working. Even a 2G phone will have a location update also. Because network service has to be provided in a cellular structure. So if the mobile phone is radiating 2 watts of power, that is when in my thighs I used to feel this sensation. Then I immediately thought I should not keep this mobile phone in my breast pocket also. If the blood circulation can be affected in the thighs, then if I keep it in my breast pocket, shirt pocket, it can easily affect the circulation with my heart as well. I never keep mobile phone in my breast pocket at all. During emergencies, when I have to walk around, I keep my mobile phone in my pant pocket only. One of them, either left side or right side. But as soon as I come back to my seat, I keep the mobile phone in my drawer. When I come back home, I keep the mobile phone on the table. I will not carry it with my body. Even when I am traveling in my bike also, I do not carry the mobile phone in my pocket. I keep it in my bag, and the bag is backside when I travel in my bike. So the mobile phone is not directly touching my body. This gap I maintain. This I understood by my experience because of my sensitivity. So my dear friends, you may think that it is a toy in your hand. You may think that one 3G, 4G, in future 5G is going to come. In 3G, it is now 2.4 gigahertz. In 2G, it was only 800 megahertz, 900 megahertz. When it came 3G, it is 2.4 gigahertz. When it is coming to 5G, it will be 60 gigahertz. 60 gigahertz. It is not a joke, my dear friends. It is a high frequency radiation which is harmful to the human tissue. So avoid carrying the mobile phone on your body. Only under extreme situations you should be carrying. That I am also doing. But otherwise, I am not keeping it in my body permanently. I never bring the mobile phone to my bedroom. I have seen some people keeping on the mobile phone below the pillow. Very sick habit. If it is radiating 2 watts of power, whole night your head is above your mobile phone. Think about the circulation that is being affected in your brain. There is something called SAR, specific absorption rate. The specific absorption rate for a human tissue is 1.8 watts per kg. If at all the specific absorption rate increases its limit, human tissue will be damaged. And this has been verified. Still, the mobile phone radiates 2 watts of power. May not be per kg, maybe less than that. But we don't know. We don't know. Each model radiates how much of power and at what circumstances. If the distance between the phone and the tower is larger, naturally, mobile will be pumping more and more power. You keep on keeping your mobile phone below the pillow, it keeps on radiating its location identities whole night. Your mobile phone will have a very good network. What about your own neural network? My dear friends, don't keep your mobile phone near you when you are sleeping. At the best case, keep it outside the bedroom only. There is one more term called BBB, blood-brain barrier. And there have been serious researches going on since last 2 decades about the harmful effects of mobile radiation on the human body. But the evidences are not published. Remember, the evidences are not published. The evidences are not allowed to be published also. Because when it is a big business, if people become educated about the harmful effects of the radiation, now the market will not have its own share. Due to which all those findings, they are not fully published. But you can search through the research papers about all this data, about this BBB itself, blood-brain barrier. And this is a typical situation where the blood flow in the brain gets affected because of the radiation. You already know about neural network. You already have seen the synaptic connections. And you know that there are billions of neurons in the brain. Now think about a situation where you will keep a mobile phone adjacent to your left ear or right ear, and you will keep on speaking for next 1 hour. Imagine the situation for the next 1 hour, half of the power is going that side, half of the power is going inside. Now you may say that you have a skull, very thick skull you have. But when God designed the head, mobile phone was not there at that time. God never thought that in future people will be carrying their high frequency radiation adjacent to their head. He designed a skull in such a way that brain gets safeguarded. Now this mobile phone radiation can penetrate through the skull. If your mobile phone is inside your bag, if it is inside your pocket, if it is inside your table drawer also, if it can ring for a call, what does it mean? Even if all the windows and doors of the house are closed, still you get a network inside your house. What does it mean? It means that the radiation can penetrate the walls. Radiation can pass through the doors. It will easily pass through your skull and easily damage your neural network. I hope you will understand the threat here. So avoid carrying the mobile phone on your body. While talking, don't block the upper part of the phone with your fingers. You have to hold the phone at the bottom, not at the top. In general, people have the habit of keeping 2 or 3 fingers above. But the antenna of the mobile phone is at the top. If you block that upper part, now your fingers will slightly block the radiation because human body can easily absorb this radiation. I have already told you about SAR, specific absorption rate. Now, when the human body absorbs part of radiation, mobile phone will increase its amplification so that its signal will reach the base station. So, when you are using your mobile phone, you should not block the upper part of the phone wherever antenna is there. You should hold at the bottom so that reduced. Network should not become maximum. Don't hold it much nearer to the head. Whenever possible, use headset or hands-free or loudspeaker. If at all you have to talk for more than 10 minutes, then specifically use loudspeaker or hands-free. Even a Bluetooth headset is there, you can use it because Bluetooth range is very less. Bluetooth range is hardly 10 to 100 meters. Mobile phone range is few kilometers. So even if you use a Bluetooth headset, no problem, or hands-free or a loudspeaker mode. Don't use the phone when its network is very low. When the network is very low, it means that its amplification is very high. Imagine a situation where you are inside the bathroom and you have to shout for somebody to give a towel or a soap or whatever. Now you will shout from inside the bathroom. Why? Because sound has to penetrate through the door. Same way in the mobile phone, if the network is very low, what it will do is it will amplify the power so that signal will reach to a farther distance. So when the network is very low, you should not use the phone for a call for a much longer duration. Don't use the phone when its battery is being charged. When the battery is being charged, you should not try to make calls. The reason is when the battery is being charged, part of the current is going to the battery and part of the lesser amount of current will be coming towards the amplifier portion. And if at all you keep on making calls, the battery's charging is also being affected. Power amplifier will have a higher gain. So it is better that when the battery is being charged, don't make lengthy calls. If at all you have to answer a call when the battery is being charged, switch off the charger, then make a call or attend a call, then again switch on the charger. Don't use the phone in the sensitive areas such as petrol bunks, hospitals, aircrafts. It causes friction and it causes interference. I already told that it is a 2.4 gigahertz signal. Don't use the phone in constricted spaces such as small rooms, cars, trains, elevators, etc. Why? The RF gets echoed. The RF which is going outside will be lesser in strength because the RF gets echoed in the small space itself. So naturally the power amplifier will increase its gain. Don't allow the children and the pregnant ladies to use the mobile phone in the normal mode. If at all they have to use, let it be in the flight mode. Let us say some people give mobile phone to the children to play. If that is the case, at that time network should not be there. Now if the radiation can penetrate to the adult skull, think about the child skull. But at many families, many houses, what I am observing is these people carelessly give the mobile phone to their kids to play without actually understanding the health danger or threat for the health. After exposed to radiation, continuously exposure to the radiation, after a few years, if the same child develops some other deficiency or some other health issue, the stupid parents may not understand that also, that it is caused because of this mobile phone's radiation. They may keep on going for checkup or to the doctors and becoming the scapegoats for the system. Keep the mobile phone away when you are asleep. I have told you enough about it. Avoid the overusage of mobile phone. It heats up. As and when the power amplifier increases the strength, there is a lot of consumption of power. Even for the CPU and the memory to keep on working, there is a lot of dynamic switching power. And gradually, more and more heat, then you have to immediately understand that it is more and more of threat. For example, if you keep your mobile phone towards your left side cheek and keep on speaking for 1 hour, after about 10-20 minutes, you can observe that your left side cheek would have become warm. If your left side cheek, then you should understand that it is because of the radiation of the mobile phone only, the cheek is warming up. It is a signal which the body is giving you that I am under threat. It is not just the cheek becoming warm. Think about the brain. For continuously half an hour, how much of radiation would have penetrated into the skull? Later on, I am going to show you a tabular column where I am going to discuss about the advantage of technology and about the disadvantage of technology. It is up to us to use our own wisdom to take care of our own health so that in spite of all the technology, we can remain healthy. Olden days, people used to do their own work, and when people used to do their own work, they used to have a lot of physical activities. They used to remain healthy. For example, in the older generation, people used to wash their own clothes, people used to draw water from the well, people used to chop their own firewood. There used to be enough of physical activity. Now there is a cooking gas in the kitchen, there is a washing machine which is washing the clothes, and there is no need of firewood now. And when you simply switch on, the motor will pump the water from the underground tank to the overhead tank. And now that is also automatic controller. You may not need not have to press a switch also. There are automatic water level controllers, which means washing machine is doing a lot of exercise and washing machine is healthy. Okay, Whoever is not doing that particular exercise, they are not doing anything. That means with the advent of technology, people become more and more lazy. This is the primary reason for sickness, which people do not understand. People think that more and more of technology means more and more of better quality of life. More and more of technology means more and more of facilities and comforts. But don't relate it to better quality of life. Better quality of life is when you have a physical health and you have a mental health. Then only that is the better quality of life. If a gadget keeps on disturbing you by means of all types of SMSs, WhatsApp messages, Facebook alerts, Gmail alerts, and voice calls, video calls, photographs, selfies, if this particular gadget keeps on disturbing your mental focus, do you think it is a better quality of life? Where right from morning till evening, you are under a different type of dilemma, different type of vacillating mind. Do you think it's a better quality of life? That way, as wise people, we should know where to put a limit. We should know where to take care of ourselves. We should not allow the gadgets to rule our life. We should be the rulers of our own life. With these parting words, I'll stop for today. We will meet again on Monday. Until then, take care and goodbye.